but I'll just, I'll be in it. So if you guys want to gather around as close as you want, anybody affiliated with the church, thank you. Part of the reason I wanted to sort of do these marketing things and invite you all out to hear a little bit about this is that who knows when the next time I'll be in such a cool venue. This is really top notch. So these two were both made during the same event on the California coast in or near Gualala. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right. There were varying interpretations. The maximum scale for this event was 18 by 24. So these are actually a little bit smaller than I normally work. And I remember before starting this event, I was really, really nervous because I had done 2 events previous. I had done Plein Air Easton in Maryland in July. Immediately on the heels of that, Plein Air Montana and Bozeman, Montana. And both had gone fabulously well. I won first place grand prize, whatever auto invite to next year, sold a bunch of work, better than you could hope. This event in Gualala, while I was really excited to paint the California coast because I'd driven by there on Highway 1 before, but I didn't have time to stop and paint. So as a subject, I was fascinated by it. But this was an open event. So it wasn't going to necessarily have the same infrastructure or maybe buyers as some of these events that are more exclusive, selective, whatever. And I also didn't know, I had this crazy road trip planned of 6 events throughout the fall for months on end. And I didn't know is this a good idea? Should I just be trying to get a conventional job in Seattle or something? I don't know. So the first couple of paintings didn't go so hot and I was kind of questioning it. But this painting specifically was the first of that event where I really thought, okay, this is gonna work, this is going well. I'm able to see things I haven't seen before or that I have and have never painted and paint them relatively faithfully. So what these are seals, or is it sea lions or seals? It's seals, yeah. Seals, pelicans, more seals, and then a bunch of seagulls kind of scattered in a piece of driftwood on this sandbar that's at the mouth of the Russian River, I believe. And there was intense sunlight. I was way up on a cliff. I could see all these little waves, really, really windy. And then the fog was kind of rolling in. So as the fog rolled in, I could no longer really see the same color, but I kind of finished the painting out by memory in terms of color, and I could still see the waves. So there's an effect here called dry brush. Anybody know what that is? So it's when you have watercolors generally saturated with water, so that see how this is kind of wet and the colors are bleeding. That's when pigment's applied on a wet surface with other wet surface, and everything kind of mixes and bleeds. That's why people like watercolor. I like watercolor for some of the dry brush effects you can get, where you have a lot of pigment and not a lot of water on your brush. And all the white here, including the border, is the white of the paper. So you avoid the white to keep the whites. And then you can do things like here, that sort of scratchy texture is me dragging a relatively dry brush across the surface so that the bumps in the paper and the texture kind of pop out. Yeah, you guys can come even closer if you want. I also just loved too in this one that there was this beautiful effect of the sun being the reflection being so big, so bright, because I'm up high, I'm hundreds of feet above the water. And the fact that you had this sandbar be darker than the water here and almost the same shade be lighter than the water over here. It's just kind of a beautiful thing that happens on these, cold, windy beaches. This one over here, very similar sort of conditions of mouth of a river, big sandbar, rocks in the distance. No wildlife in this one. This one I was fairly proud of because it was, I think, the 4th painting that I did that afternoon. So I didn't really know how many pieces and paintings I could do before going out and doing this event. But we were allowed to put 8 works on the wall, up to 8 and up to 18 by 24. So at that point, with 1 day to go, I had done 4 that were of the acceptable scale and I thought were really pretty much good enough to hang. And I was like, well, even if I make 4 terrible paintings today, I'll try anyway. And so I was actually done. I was going to call it at 7. And then I saw this, and I was headed to dinner, and I saw this sunset, and the way that the clouds were kind of parting here, and the sun was back up here. This water was kind of aqua green here, and in the waves, and then gold over here, where you could see the light, the golden hour sunlight reflected on the clouds. And I was just like, well, I got it. Sometimes you're called to paint something. Sometimes you don't necessarily choose like, oh, I'm gonna go here today, I'm gonna do this. But yeah, any questions about these at all? Or
That's magnificent, all the color in that, all through it.
Oh,
everywhere.
Thank you.
And everything from the soft passages to the dry brush, just stunning.
Oh, thanks. This is a direct descendant of the kind of color. It's not even theory. It's just paying close attention to what color are you really seeing that we worked on in Santa Fe. Like I owe so much of like that kind of being able to see the red in the shadows, things like that, or this kind of like peach to aqua. That's like so much of the same skill set that we would do like on still life painting indoors in oil. And it is much harder, or at least it's harder for me, to mix those kinds of colors in watercolor. But like you can do it in theory. I definitely have a bunch of paintings of this time of day that didn't turn out, you know? Because if you do it wrong too, it's watercolor, so you kind of get one-ish chance. And if you do it wrong, like if you get that color wrong or it's too dark, it's like, well, that's that, just next one. But yeah, should we move to these next two? Also from the Gualala event, and I think this one's our poster child on the little postcard. And actually the other image that's on that postcard, if anybody grabbed one, is me kneeling down and working on this one. I'm not even gonna look at my notes because I can't. What I really want to talk with you guys about this one is there's three things that really drew me to the scene, and one was the wind itself. Like just the amount of wind that day was so crazy that I probably couldn't have really worked on any bigger of a board than holding the 22 by 30 board with one hand with an 18 by 24. I could not have done the larger scale on that day. It was just like sustained somewhere around 30 to 40 mile an hour wind, no joke. It was pretty brutal and stuff was getting in my eyes. A lot of salt spray too, so you kind of just have to roll with it. It was also very freezing, even though it was September on the California coast. I was in full longs and leggings and everything. So the wind was one thing that just really drew me. I loved how it was kicking up the spray on the waves, right? As they break, the tops of them would be taken forward of the wave, and you just get this like howling, kind of rushing feeling. The other thing that I loved about it was that right on the top of this rock was a little tide pool, just on the very top where the waves would continually deposit water, and you could see the blue of the sky reflected in it. So I think in this painting, that might have been the first thing that I mixed and applied, was that kind of light blue. And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't cover over that with the dark rock. Because this is watercolor, generally you work light to dark, and kind of once you go over something with dark, you can pull it back, but like not a lot. So like for these waves, for example, there's a little bit of using a wet brush and pulling upwards to kind of get some of the lighter, parts there. But like the scratchy sort of waves in the distance, all that is the white of the paper left. And then the third thing, as promised, that I said I would, share with you guys about why I chose this scene. Look at these cute little seals down here. There's just like 4 of them. And I love watching seals in the big surf, or any surf, because when they're like lying on their side and they're so fat that their heads are already not touching the ground usually, if they just kind of lying on their own bulk. And then when the waves come, they go, and they tilt sideways, like to not get wet or something. And then when they pass us, they relax. It's just it's so cute. And these huge waves were breaking right here, but they picked the perfect spot, because on this side of the rock, they were just hanging out. The water was kind of rushing around it. This one, I think, was the third piece that I did during that same event. It honestly didn't go great in terms of the day. I was experimenting with a couple different things. I had bought this enormous 10 by 10 foot shade tent, and I was lugging this thing down to the beach with me so that I could set up shade, work in the shade. That way when you bring the work inside, it doesn't look too dark. If you work in full sunlight outdoors, does anybody plein air paint here or do outdoors painting? I think we have maybe. No? Nobody? All right, well, anyways, I hope you take it up after tonight. Happy to share some brushes and paints with you. If you work out in full sunlight and then you bring that work indoors, it tends to look a little bit dark. But if you work in the shade, when you bring the work out into a lit up scenario, you get a much more like kind of vibrant feeling with your work. So this one, I had to drag this giant tent down this cliffside. I went to this beach specifically because it's really famous. It's called Bowling Ball Beach. But if the tide is in, you can't see the cool rock structures that give it its name. And the tide was like all the way in. That's not one of the rocks. Like they're under here somewhere, and they look really cool. They like I saw pictures of it, and I was like, oh, so cool. But when I got there, it was kind of just a beach with waves. But I figured, I'm here in California coast. I'm going to be doing a lot of inland events after this, so I'll just paint waves. So I actually ended up for all 8 pieces for that show. I think all of them had waves. And it was just it was a fun experience to kind of focus on a certain subject in different kind of contexts and light conditions and places. But yeah, would have loved to see those rock structures, but you got to imagine them. Any questions about these two before we move along? Or general questions too? Yeah.
General question. You mentioned there's a group of you painting these scenes, or is it just you? Or?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. This event too, I was starting to feel a little bit insane because the first event I did was like the biggest, most coveted one in Easton, Maryland. You know, they wined and dined us. They brought us out to mansions and stuff. They had all these events, all these like crazy things. And then this one was like, all right, go paint for 2 weeks. And I thought I saw one other artist in the event. But when I chatted him up and we kind of figured it out, it turned out he was doing a different event that was like further inland in Sonoma. And I was like, okay, so for the whole 2 weeks, I actually never even saw a single other painter in the event.
Well, one reason I ask is if there's 5 of you, painting the same scene, do they all look alike when you compare?
Oh, always so different. So different. You could be standing right next to somebody else. These are all in what other people would call my style, but I'm not trying to necessarily have a style. I'm just trying to paint it as well as I possibly can. And that's what most of these other artists who do a lot of plein air stuff are also doing. But our paintings are gonna look totally different. Most people work in oil, some work in watercolor, but oil is kind of like the standard, more or less. And then a lot of the watercolors are usually a bit smaller if they do them. But yeah, it's always like, I love seeing what the other artists make because it's always a surprise. So yeah, should we move on then? Sure. Next one. From that first plein air event in Easton, Maryland, this was my first ever time getting into one of these. Didn't know how it was going to go. Was really excited to be there and do it, but also had it in the back of my mind. I don't know, because there's a lot of pageantry around it. There's prizes to be won. They bring in collectors. They expect you to make work kind of on demand in certain places at certain times a day.
So there's a lot of people there doing this at the same time.
It's a big deal, yeah. They bring out about 57 or 58 artists every year, and thousands, I would say multiple thousands of people come to that location to watch it and to interact with the artists.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, they do a great job of publicizing it. It's like a whole thing. So 2 of these are 2 of my favorite pieces from that event. This one I had already finished painting for the day, and I think I was speaking with somebody before we started here. I had already eaten dinner, I had already had a couple beers, I had no plans to paint, but again, the sunset looked like that, and I had been trying for years to get this color, this very high humidity sunset clouds where you can't tell quite what is the sky, where do the clouds on the sky begin. Those low clouds are almost lighter than the red of the sky, which doesn't even make cognitive sense. And I think in this one, that's as close as I could get it at the time. It's a very simple painting. This wash of the sky was definitely done first, all the way down, and then leaving, and then lightening back to yellow right at the bottom here, that kind of yellowish orange tone. I think the next thing that would have happened while it was still wet was adding in the clouds. Some of them are a little bit dry brushed on, but a lot of them are bleeding in. And then the next step would have been the blue of the water. The next step would have actually been these posts. So there's no horizon line yet, right? There's nothing there. That's just empty. The posts were pretty simple. I clearly here took a wet brush and scraped out some of the pigment there because this post was done first, this one was done next. But to make that feel like it's in front of it, I've got the top there sort of erased. And then I remember the last thing I did, making sure it was really dry, was to do the horizon line. So you can actually see where the horizon line stops and starts around right at the edges of these posts, because it wasn't just applied flatly. Because again, with watercolor, if I go over that, there's no way to then get back and make this post feel like it's in front again. You could with opaque paint, but I think it's a little more elegant to try to get things in a single layer. This painting is obviously more complicated in terms of the line work and the composition and the subject, but it's pretty similar. It's a similar time of day. I painted this one just as the sun was rising. It was actually about here when I started, so I planned for it to be here so I could see what the light would do around the trees, but that meant that I had to strategize looking at the disk of the sun first, doing that, leaving the white, starting and moving my way outward with the wet edge being around it, kind of going like this and like this into bigger and bigger circles to blend from this bright orange, sort of more diffuse orange, to the blue of the sky, to this green of the reflection, the green of the upper sky, all while it's wet. Let that dry a bit. Do a similar process with these trees, kind of starting with the red and then moving into these darks and then moving into the blues of the bowsprit and whatnot. All of that took about 45 minutes. The shrouds on the boat and some of the sail details and the chains took another 2 hours. Because this is, what is it? Yeah, Tillman Island in Maryland. This is the Rebecca T. Rourke, one of the last slipjacks. These are boat people. They know this boat like they know the face of an old friend. If I don't get it right, I'm going to forever hear, well, that's not where the top gallant goes. That goes over here. It's by the foremast. Whatever. I don't know that much about these boats, so my only option was to be very precise in measuring this stuff, looking sort of up at the top of the masts and where these lines connected, and then doing things to get these straight lines, like laying down my big white painting boards that are kind of propped up over there. I had those laid down here so that I could make sure that even though it's not on picture, these lines are still converging at the correct points up on the top of the mast. There's details in here too, like the braiding on the rope, the knots, every link of chain. It was kind of an ambitious piece, but I felt pretty good about it, and I just wanted to do something that was a little more challenging and ambitious than my almost, I hate to say it, formulaic approach of sky, water, horizon line in between. Any questions about these?
Is it satisfying when you're spending that much time on those details?
It is, because the scariest part of doing paintings like this is that I'll mix the color as well as I can, I'll go for a big area, and it'll just be wrong. And there's not much you can really do. When it comes to doing details, usually the big structures and the things that are holding the painting together, like the color, the composition, are already in place. So doing small detail work, it would be like you're making a figure painting. If you've got everything really structurally in the right place, now you can do a great job on painting or sculpting, whatever, the hand. Okay, if you've done that really well, now you can work on the fingernails. So it's a progression. I wouldn't start with the links on the chain. Even if I could, I wouldn't want to, because you might get them so nice and then you realize, oh my gosh, they're in the wrong spot. Yeah.
You don't do any tracing at all, do you, when you start?
No. I don't know. How do you mean tracing?
Like, sketch something out in the pencil and then, no?
No.
Oh, no.
Really?
No, really?
Wow.
I know, it seems insane. It seems like maybe that would be a good idea. Maybe that would save me time. No, I just want to see if I can do it. I mean, I want to see if I can do it without that. And the media is watercolor. So when you start to combine graphite and watercolor, you will just get a different look in the work. And I'm very familiar with that look. It's, for me, it's too much painting within the lines. Even if those lines are correct, if I want to wildly change something or allow the composition to kind of develop more organically, that process doesn't allow that to happen. This one does. So this one allows me to have the sun here, but recall that I painted it when it was still here. It's hard to even, I'm listening to myself and it barely makes sense to me. Imagine just that as we're turning towards the sun, you have to plan. I knew I wanted to paint it when I could see it right there. And I knew that if I started in and laid everything out as if the sun is right there, by the time I'm really getting into these light conditions, it's already up here and things have changed a lot. So luckily, I woke up at 4 and I started when it was right there, because I'd already been awake early some of the other mornings, and so I could anticipate, okay, this is kind of what's going to happen. Or, like, pretty sure it's going to rise. Pretty sure it's not going to get shy and go back down. Hopefully not. And that allows you to strategically set up these paintings. Even if you don't have a pencil drawing, it's just a different way of setting up the painting. But there still is, like, the pencil is a strategy for accuracy. So is this. It just does mean that sometimes things are a little bit wonky. But in this one, at least, straight lines. Yeah.
How many things do you throw away? How many percentage-wise?
It's a percentage, and it's lower than it used to be. And I did have an experience where I drove to Texas for an event. It was the last event of the fall. And I remember the first or second day, I think it was the first day, I went through 4 or 5 sheets in rapid succession. That was really rare. I was in a dark place for that. Usually now my success rate, things I'm throwing away is like 1 in 10. Things that are good to less good are 60%. And then things that I think are like, wow, this really turned out well, is maybe like 40 to 10%. But it used to be like every 9 out of 10 paintings were just like, I wouldn't show this to anyone. I think you have to go through that period with watercolor. Do you paint watercolor at all?
No.
Yeah, with watercolor especially, you are going to look at a lot of trial and error. It's just what it's going to be. Yeah. Should we move on?
Of the palm tree painting.
Oh, yeah. Palm
And,
tree.
I saw
In
that-
Palm Desert, yeah.
I was really impressed with the rhythm of the fence posts that you did and how you got those. And I noticed that you have like a ruler or something that helps you
Oh,
get
yeah.
your lines, but still, even these lines are really impressive, these guide wires, right? If you're doing those, I mean, you're not free, are you freehanding them?
I'm not
Using
freehanding.
pencil, or-
So I used a ruler in that one because that was a 40 by 60. Hey, welcome. There was a 40 by 60 painting that I made in Palm Desert of shopping mall escalators. And it involved a lot of built elements, a lot of straight lines.
They're kind of noisy too, weren't they?
Well, yeah, it was great. I loved that scene. But I brought an actual straight edge, like an actual ruler. Usually what I do is I hack it with the edges of those white boards that are sitting over there. I just clumsily sort of line those up so that they're at an angle, and then the brush is resting with the side of the brush on it, and that'll get you where you need to go.
But I'm still guessing, the question is, did you do a lot of them practice-wise?
A lot.
Just straight lines, just to
Oh no, the straight line's really new. I had a lot of paintings where it was a great painting, but the horizon line was just a little bit like this, and I just it was kind of embarrassing after a point. So I decided to bring along some version of having a straight edge for moments like that, but I don't use it very much. I don't use it very
Well,
much.
those look great, because I would think it would be
Well, thanks.
hard to get, even if you're going straight, it's the in and out, you get fat and thinner.
Mm-hmm. That actually is still very difficult because I am using a brush, right? So you have to be strategic about what brush you're going to use. Is it going to twist on you? If your hand twists, there's a practice to it for sure. Yeah. Something that could probably be made simpler by using a pencil. That's what the people want. All right. So these two. This one is from a event that I added last minute on the road during the Gualala event, which are where the first 4 are from. So this one's from Mendocino. And this one is one of the 2 that isn't from an event at all. This is just a beautiful sunrise from the Hotel Captain Whidbey on Whidbey Island. I don't know if anybody's ever been there. It's a great, great spot. Anyways, we'll talk about this one first. I was feeling really comfortable, maybe not comfortable. I was really digging painting waves when I worked on this one. I joined this event because one of the other artists told me that there was another event going on at the same time. And I thought I could make a couple extra paintings. It's only an hour down the road that way, no problem. So I was standing right on the edge of this kind of cliff, about 20, 30 feet above the water, Wasn't trying to stand too close because as you can see, a lot of these rocks are kind of undercut, and I'm looking almost straight down at the waves kind of rushing over rocks. As I started, almost immediately, not only are the waves, coming in and out and the light is changing constantly, there's the reflection of the sky, sunlight, and fog. There's also a lot of sort of sea foam and other kind of stuff. And then have you guys ever like watched waves crashing on rocks tidally? It's hard to even understand what you're seeing because 1 second there's foam and then the next it's just the black seaweed again. So I was trying to do something that I hadn't really done before, experimenting with ways of kind of like leaving the white of the, there's no gouache in this one, so leaving the white of the paper and kind of trying to observe like the overall pattern of what it looks like, not necessarily picking like a photographic exact one moment, but trying to do as well as I could, given that I'm, not perfect at seeing and painting everything in like 2 seconds. The other thing that's really fun about this one, we don't have this work here because it's with my family, but just off to the right, I was actually done painting this one. Just off to the right, there was this cormorant on a ledge, just standing there, kind of looking over its shoulder and looking at me sometimes and looking back down. And it stood there for a full hour and a half. And so I painted it for like 75 minutes. And I'd never been able to actually paint like a bird that held still outside for that long before. So that was pretty exciting. That's what I think of when I look at this one. I mean, that painting's fine, but it's the bird one I think of. This was another morning, kind of like the Easton one, unplanned, but this predates it. So this is from April of last year. So I hadn't done any of these plein air events, but stuff like this is pretty formative for having the confidence to go to these plein air events and just kind of do my normal thing. I think some of the artists that participate in these events, or at least this is what I've heard, is that, they feel this pressure to like compete for the pageantry or make really good work or make better work or whatever. I just love being outside, especially in the early morning sunrise with water and staring at the sun and painting that. I'm obsessed. So to go to Easton and do that or wherever, it's not really like, oh, I'm having to do something different. It's just kind of, that's my, if not comfort zone, that's in my wheelhouse. That's in my skill set. That's in my practice already. A lot of that is informed by the kind of discipline that I learned during like playing sports. Because if you're trying to go into a competition and you're, hey, welcome, and you're doing something or you expect to do something under pressure that you've never done before in practice, I can tell you the odds of that are small. If you do it, amazing. I would love to, if that's how the world worked, that'd be great. Welcome. But really, you should probably practice what you want to do. So I know at this point that I'd gotten into this plein air event, so I was like, well, I got to paint plein air a lot. So, any questions about these two at all? Yeah.
Do you wear sunglasses, or how do you look into the sun at the same time?
Just like I'm looking at you. I just stare.
Doesn't that mess up with all the other colors?
Yes, actually, yes, that is a real thing. So what he's asking about is totally true, which is as you stare into, like if you really do just stare directly at the sun, it will drain the color out of your vision and you will not be able to then look at something else without seeing these crazy green spots and whatnot. Sometimes I welcome that into the kind of overall effect. And sometimes, like in this one, the sun was just kind of breaking over under the clouds. And when I'm working at this too, sometimes I won't look exactly at the sun, but I'll look kind of off and kind of like maybe glance at it. But I am really trying to pay attention, especially to what happens like around that kind of aura when the sun is bright, because it's different than what like a phone photo is going to see. Like in that one over there, that kind of vertical banding that happens where, this color is lighter than this color is lighter than this color. There's sort of a light bleed. And then if you get up close and you look, these trees all kind of read legibly as trees, as dark green trees, but the paint color right around there is a bright, or sort of a dark orange, right? So when we're looking at it, we might not notice that orange. We just think, oh, bright plus trees. But if you really pay attention to it, which is something I'm interested actually, is that like breakdown of vision. Like what can you actually see versus like what can you really not see? Like I love squinting and seeing what happens when like, you're looking at bright lights and there's all these little, streaks and bands and stuff, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, does that kind of answer what, yeah. So yeah, don't go blind just staring into the sun, but maybe around the sun. All right, should we move on? These two are also from Plein Air Easton. So the first event that I ever attended, Plein Air event in Maryland. It's in July. It's so hot. I mentioned it before, but like, it is one of the reasons I learned in this world that a lot of artists who are like extremely qualified to go to this and probably would get in, as it is like one of the most coveted top events or whatever, they refuse to go because they're like, I just can't do the heat, humidity. Like, it's just not for me. I don't know. I don't like it. And it is true that a lot of times when I was working, my nose would drip onto the, like, just sweat. But these were both done. This was done in the evening. This was done very early in the morning. I think this was another one where I woke up at about 4 or so to start painting at 5:45 because I had a bit of a drive to get out there. I love these kinds of atmospheric effects at the end of the day. It's changing so fast, but with the kind of color training that I had from Tony Ryder in Santa Fe, it's like I can see those things ever since, almost for the first time. We didn't touch on this too much, but does everybody in here have some sort of favorite, most beautiful place in the world that they adore? Just think of it for a second, where might that be? For me, it's Seattle, Washington, boring. But I have truly seen a lot of different things all over Europe, wherever. I keep coming back to Seattle because it is just the landscape, especially the landscape when you're around the water in the morning or at the ends of the day, or like the early afternoon today was nuts. I should have been painting then. I painted earlier in the day. Oops. I think it's totally unlike anything else I've ever seen. At the same time, it's challenging to paint. It's a lot of grays. It's a lot of, days where it's like, is this sun? Is this our version of sun? I guess we'll take it. Maryland in the summer, very different. Really hot, really humid. Same kind of sunset colors, but almost like more straightforward. Like something like this, like I was almost just looking at this beautiful kind of rainbow gradient. Something like this, and this one too, like the one we looked at over there of the after sunset painting outside Doc's Sunset Grill, not incredibly complicated as a painting. Like works like these, it's not that I'm trying to get away from them, but like if I were to criticize this kind of stuff, it would almost seem like I'm falling into some kind of formula of, watercolor wash sky, cool beginning, end of day, far horizon, near horizon, waves, 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 done, right? It's only got like 4 things going on. There's no people here, there's no boats, nothing. But the real reason that I like doing scenes like this is that I am just like infatuated by how beautiful they are. And it starts with that. It starts with a curiosity for the actual subject. So even when I'm doing these plein air events, sometimes they'll say, go here, paint here. But for Plein Air Easton, there was a lot of time to go out and paint whatever you want. So this piece was kind of the first piece I did when the event actually started, where I was like, okay, I at least have something I can put on the wall. And then this one, like I said, was kind of this pet project, this idea I had of like, well, I really want to get this like 5 a.m. or, pre 6 a.m., like pre-sunrise is kind of what's really interesting to me. Yeah. Any questions about these two? Yeah.
Well, so the one on the left, I'm wondering what's making the ripples, the waves. Is it?
Oh yeah. A boat did go by at one point. Yeah. Or it might have been wind, or it might have been tide.
So to me, that does add interest.
Yeah.
Compared to the placid one on the right.
Yeah. This was a much calmer morning. It was like kind of misty, foggy. The reason I did the most interesting part of this was the fact that the orange of this cloud was sort of nestled within some of the waves. That's what was the draw. Yeah.
What's your approach for capturing different cloud types and cloud shapes?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I'm like, oh crap, and I make it up every time. I don't have any formula, and sometimes it just goes so bad, and I'm like, well, I learned something. It depends on what the cloud looks like. Sometimes you will get clouds that have just this incredibly crisp, defined edge. Like I'm thinking of the piece that you have with the pink clouds, where like the sun was setting, and you could just, so the sun's behind me, I'm looking, and you get the Pixar pink lit up house clouds. And sometimes they have these bleeding edges, and they're just wisps, And other times it's hard to tell what's going on. As kind of you approach the horizon line here, it's like there was so much humidity that the barrier between like cloud and just horizon and distance was all kind of mixed. So the way that I approach it, and this isn't a cop-out, it's really true, is I really try to see what I'm seeing and understand those clouds on that day as well as I can. And generally, if I have already done a lot of work in similar conditions, it's not like I bring a formula, but I just get better at slightly better at doing it like over time in the aggregate. But every single painting where clouds are an element, sometimes even just a blue sky, like just a regular like gradient, darker blue to like, I'll just screw it up so badly. And I'm like, well, that was, you know, all right, something else tomorrow, I guess. It can be maddening sometimes. And other times it just comes together very simply, very quickly. Like both of these, you know, this guy I'd say is a little bit less successful. There were some things that didn't quite work. That one was very successful. And I'm really just trying to get it as close as I can to what I'm really seeing. Like I'd say I'm focused on color first. Color and then asking myself the shape question next. Because with watercolor, you know, once you have the color mixed, that usually takes most of the time, and then to place it doesn't really take that much time. So, yeah. Any other questions, or move on? This piece is hilarious. The last piece that I cut from this show, like the first single not to make it onto the album, was actually a painting of the same scale, but of pelicans. And I knew I couldn't really do both, but I really wish we had that pelicans painting here. You can look it up on your own time. Because the reason I was able to do something like this, which is high school boys playing ultimate frisbee as fast as high school boys do that, which is like blindingly fast, plein air, no photo reference, and on kind of a limited time frame and under pressure to perform because I had already accepted the paycheck for it. So I needed to actually make something like, and it was for my high school's alumni magazine. So it was like going to be printed. Maximum amount of pressure. I've never done anything like this before, except I had painted pelicans from life in La Jolla. And I'd taken 3 days to do that. It was kind of a complicated scene with a bunch of birds, having a line where there's sort of a shore edge and a big wave, and the head sticking up in between. So I couldn't just kind of wash everything over. The way I did that was with all transparent watercolor, so no white. And with this, I was just like, you know, I don't know how I'm gonna do this at all. And I started thinking on the day, my actual original assignment was to paint the football team. And then on the day that was changed to frisbee team. And the football team, I was like, great, helmets, jerseys, football. I don't know. I'm not a football player, so I don't really know exactly what it looks like, but I know they practice in the jerseys, so there was gonna be some idea about how I would do it. On the day I show up and they're actually frisbee. I was like, cool, frisbee, amazing. I had been an ultimate player. I was like, oh, I got this, I know the sport. And then the coach was like, all right, everybody, you know, play. And the speed of play was just like, they were gone. I would look up and I'd be like, where'd that kid go? He's gone. You know, draw a different, no, he's gone too. You know, so I made some sketches in my sketchbook of the coach the first day and had nothing printable after like 2 hours of work. Like really, really bad, subpar, not this yet, nothing was happening here. Just like terrible sketches. And of course, you know, the players and coach were like, can we see what you did? And I was like, yeah, in a couple of days. It's not ready yet. But really I was thinking like, I truly don't know what I'm gonna do. But I thought of the pelicans and I was like, okay, I've got like 3 more days to work on something. Why don't I just try big watercolor? I've been doing big watercolors and maybe I'll just do the background first. Okay, you know, bright green field in the afternoon, sun behind it, trees. Like this is from Lakeside School. This is where I went. I know this venue really well. I know the feeling. I love the smell. It's incredible. And I was like, okay, background. And you know what? Maybe I'll dip into the white gouache, which is what some of these highlights and points are, so that I can like give myself that chance to work opaquely instead of always transparently. Because with transparent watercolor, which is every other piece here, once you cover up the white, that's it. You don't get it back. You have to use white paint to get it back. With this, I was like, okay, white paint, fine. And after the first day, anytime I'd see an athlete in motion, I would just make a quick sketch like of whatever I could. And then I'd move on to the next. And if I saw somebody, you know, do the same movement again, I would just get as much as I could again, as fast as I could, and kind of work up in layers. And after the first day, I was like, okay, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. I have 2 more days. Cool. Second day, worked furiously, was putting on white touches, highlights, whatever, getting some of their high-vis jerseys, refining some of the green around the players' legs, so working on both sides of the line instead of with regular transparent watercolor. You just have that one mark. That's it. That's all you get. So it was really coming together, and I was actually proud to share the work with the coach, share the work with the athlete. I was getting into a lot of the optics of the trees. It was just going well. And they were like, wow, that's so cool. Are you done? And I was like, well, no, I'm definitely going to work on it one more day. And they were like, well, we don't have practice tomorrow. And I was like, well, all right, it's done then. So that's it. So if it looks a little scruffy, that's because it is. So, yeah. Any questions about this one at all?
It's great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's fun.
I had a blast with this one. I mean, but it was, I just wanted to tell you guys how scared I was before it started to work, because it could have also not worked. And then I would have been a little bit so, Jim, is there any other assignment we can, is a football team, are they practicing still, So, yeah. Oh, do you have
That visual is just an interpretation of a bunch of fragmented moments put together, right?
Yes.
That scene never happened in that way.
No, this is 2 days, 2 days at the end of August, 2-hour practices each of me just working as fast as I can, and then towards the end of that, doing things like filling in background elements around some distant players, putting, super bright, opaque white gouache to bring out the highlights of the Frisbees so that it looks like it's a coherent, or working back around their legs with green, getting rid of whatever player that was and whatever player that was, but not totally, because I thought I had another day, Yeah.
It's interesting that you say getting rid of whatever player that was, because the one that's right between the 2 people on the sort of the right side-ish, that was
this guy?
To the left right there.
This
yeah.
guy.
I was immediately drawn to that because I was like, oh, that looks like movement, and I thought did you I thought that was the shadow of a person's prior position.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's really neat, but it sounds like you're saying it's just no, we're trying to cover that up.
Are you talking specifically about this whole figure, or?
I'm talking about.
Yeah. Just point at it. Yeah.
Right here, right here.
Oh, yeah. That is a covered figure. Yeah.
Yeah. From a distance, it really looks like I was that's literally where this person once was.
Great. Yeah. No, but it literally might have been though. That's the thing. Is it's not like they suddenly started playing lawn darts or bowling instead. They were still playing Frisbee, and what I've noticed with these scenes that appear to be at first infinitely complex and blinding, if you just stare at it more and more, it's everything starts to slow down, right? Everything starts to be patterns are recognizable. Players may have similar body language or different body language, or, more than one player probably bent over to retie their shoes or do whatever they were doing there. So that's what I do when I'm working, when it kind of reaches this point of okay, I have enough different kinds of figures here and there. Now I'm scanning the horizon like a prey animal, looking for, okay, there's a kid bending over. Do I have a kid bending over? Yes. Okay, great. Something, and, or just trying to remember what it looked like, for some of these more athletic movements, it's not totally, as you mentioned, I think, it's not anatomically perfect by any stretch, but it is just it's the best I could do at this moment in time.
No,
so.
I love it, yeah.
Oh, well, thanks, yeah.
Great.
They printed it, so it all worked out, Any other questions about that one, or? All right, let's move on. Have kind of a strange, interesting story behind them as well. Both are from an event called Plein Air Montana, which is in Bozeman, Montana. I'd never been before. It was immediately on the heels of doing Plein Air Easton in Easton, Maryland. So it was my second ever event, and I didn't really know what to expect. I wasn't supposed to be there at all. It was another one of these juried events, which I had not gotten into, and I was taking a week in between, I was taking a week in between the Easton event and actually planning on doing some rowing racing in St. Catharines, Ontario. So I had gone to St. Catharines a week early and was truly just painting and drawing seagulls that week. I really didn't have, Easton had been such madness, and I didn't have a really full schedule when I was up in St. Catharines. So my days consisted of like drawing seagulls. This isn't from St. Catharines, but I just want you guys to know in no uncertain terms, like, this is what I do in my spare time. It's like, this is a seagull choking down a starfish and another one trying to take it from him. Oh, you should have seen it. This guy got like 3. Anyway, I had to draw what a starfish was for a non-English as first language people who were asking. They were like, "What's he eating?" Anyway, back to Montana. So I'm in St. Catharines, Ontario. I have no expectations of doing one of these plein air events again until the fall because, like I said, I hadn't gotten into any others, even though that one went well. And I was like, you know what I could do in my spare time while I'm just kind of kicking around here? I could just email every single plein air event there is and ask if they have any last minute openings, and wasn't thinking too much of it. It's the day before racing is supposed to start when I got a call. Now in the art world, you never get a call. That doesn't happen. And I was like, hello, and they were like, hi, this is Linda of the Bozeman Art Museum. We'd love to have you out for plein air Montana. Can you make it? And I was like, is this a joke? Is this serious? She's like, yeah, I got your email, loved your work. Come on down. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, where is this again? Right, Bozeman, Montana. Yeah, I'm like looking at my phone. She's like, are you close? And I was like, when does the event start? And they were like, oh, tonight. I was like, oh. And she's like, well, we could do it next year if not. And I was like, when does the event end? When does the event end? They were like, Friday. And I was like, all right, it's Sunday. I'll be there. Cool. So I had just packed everything out of my car into the hotel room, packed everything back into the car, took myself out to a nice calm dinner, drove 1,000 miles Monday, drove 1,000 miles Tuesday, made this painting, I guess, Wednesday, made this painting Thursday, and then another one, won the event, got my work into a museum, because Bozeman Art Museum had a purchase award. But I was pretty tired. And at the time when I did this one, I had just driven 2,000 miles in 2 days, which I didn't know was possible, like for me or my car. And this painting actually really sucked to make, because I had to hike in all my stuff, my heavy watercolor stuff, which is over there. And I don't know why I took up one of the locals on this offer of like, yeah, we'll hike into the mountains and we'll paint and be hardcore. And I was like, why did I could have just stayed in town today. I could have just drawn puppies or something. And there were horse flies that were about 1 inch across. For a while, I think they're gone now, but I had like scars on my wrists because they would bite so bad. But the advantage is they fly really slow, so you can like hit them out of the air, but then they're just stunned and they reanimate and they come back. As I was working on this, a dog ran through my whole setup and spilled water and stomped one of my boards in half. But I at least had a painting that was like somewhat acceptable. And this is actually a really good example of like, this sky is like fine. Obviously it's up on the wall, it's okay, but like, this isn't like my best sky ever. I was struggling, even there. And I did use, there's one other piece that has whitewash in it, that's this one. There's a little bit of whitewash in the blue on the lake here, those lighter strokes. So usually when you see a lighter color on a darker color in all this work, it's because the darker color was applied second on top of the lighter color. This blue, these little blue waves here are an example of the other thing. So that's a light blue being applied on top of a darker ground. This was the piece that I was most proud of from Bozeman, plein air Montana. I was so dead after that I kind of had a panic attack, and I called I shouldn't say panic attack, but I was as stressed as I ever get. Called a friend of mine and he was like, dude, just like take the afternoon off, like rest, like get organized, like you'll feel better when you've had sleep. Sure enough, next morning, went into town, grabbed, some little luxury coffee, and there was like this super cute puppy. And I just like, with the owner's permission, drew that puppy for an hour. And then I just felt great, because who doesn't like looking at puppies for an hour? I was biking around looking for something to paint, and I saw this bizarre scene, which was this golden, perfectly, like almost perfectly weeded wheat field of wheat about this high, just in the middle of like kind of an industrial district. And I was like, who's growing wheat here? That makes no sense. Turns out it's an art installation by Agnes Dennis from New York in like the 80s called Wheat Field. See, do you get it? It's a wheat field. And what really drew me to this exact scene was not just this beautiful golden color of the wheat, but this awesome reflection off the car. So I worked sky, wheat field, did all the little brushes, so none of the horizon at all. And actually that in and of itself looked so good that I was very close to calling it and being like, it's, how Superman feels about Kansas. That's it. But then I was like, that's a total cop-out. And then I did all the other intermediate stuff, including this guy who worked there it was an art museum, with his Oakleys on. Some of the details on the car, the glare, these sort of like new build buildings with their sort of strange architecture. But I was pretty proud of this one, especially because some of the work that I did in Easton, which isn't up of like buildings and stuff, just hadn't quite come off as well as I'd have wanted it to. So I kind of had something to prove to myself to be like, I can make a telephone wire sort of straight or whatever. So, any questions about those before we? All right, cool. All right, so this brings us to the final piece. Now, these aren't in a chronological order necessarily, but I wanted to include this one because it's kind of a sentimental favorite for me because it reminds me of, I guess, what's possible when you get out there and you do beyond what's your own comfort zone and kind of like under pressure from the context of having like, this expectation that like, okay, I'm at this event, I'm supposed to, I'm not just supposed to make paintings, I'm supposed to make like good paintings, right? Like that's the idea. At the same time, I always in these events, no matter where they are, I have always really been enjoying myself. Maybe not all the time, maybe not every painting, but this one is one of the more successful paintings to come out of anything in the last year. And where it is I think we were in Eureka or nearby. This is called Moonstone Beach. So the reason it's called that, and you can't really see it too much in this one, but when the sand is wet and it's kind of early morning or ends of day, it has this iridescent sheen to it, and it's all these different colors. I knew coming into this one, even doing this event would be a stretch. I had heard about it, again, from one of the plein air painters I'd met in a different California event. They had suggested that I come to their event, and I had said, you know what, I'll think about it. I didn't even commit to it because I looked at my schedule and I was like, okay, this is a week-long event. It's hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from the events that bookend it. So I can probably only come out for like one day of painting, and then I have to go straight off to the next one that I've committed to. But that's allowed. It's an open event. They weren't scheduling things where, attendance was required. Obviously, guys, if you're artists, you got to go to your gallery openings. Come on, you got to go. But if you can't make it, if you're just there to participate and participation is the choice over non-participation, great, gonna do it. So I showed up at this one beach, this one afternoon, and I knew that we had this section of the wall that was narrower than this, maybe like this big and about as high up to the ceiling. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just make ideally 3 30 by 42 paintings this afternoon. And hopefully, at least some of them are good. And they all turned out pretty well. A different one than this one won Best in Show. I thought this was a better painting, but you can't account for opinion. But what I had fun about this one was, this was the third of the 3 paintings that afternoon. And it had been going pretty well. And one of the things I've noticed with painting outside like this is that you can kind of get on a roll where your vision and your hand and everything's just kind of like, that part of your brain is fully awake and alive. And so you can just kind of keep going, and it's not this extra strain. It's not a decision. You're already there. If you have the paper and the boards and you have some paint and water left, you might as well. Also, as I had started on the sky, leaving the white of the paper here and here, washing in this kind of horizon and water and beach as one, and then going back doing the waves here, I just got so lucky that this surfer gal, whose silhouette was like exactly that, was just like striding out into the sunset on these miles of low tide exposed sand beach. So sometimes you might see in some paintings, even if they're plein air, kind of invented things and figures being put in, like put a figure in it. I just don't do that. I think it would look like I did that if I did it, and it would compromise my sense of integrity. But this person was actually there, and I was kind of hanging around hoping they would come back so I could show it to them, but I never saw them again. They just wandered into the distance. There's also some pelicans up here, just some teeny tiny pelicans. I think that's another one right there. They have kind of a distinctive way of flying. But I was pretty proud of this too, because this was also under my giant 10 by 10 shade tent. And work like this is kind of the reason why I want to go out and do more and more of these plein air events, at least until next July, because I think that it just helps me to be under that pressure, be in new environments, be challenged, and just learn what's possible. Whether you get to show it to your subjects or not. You know, the pelicans I don't think care either. But yeah. Any questions about this one at all, or anything we've looked at? Cool. All right. Well, that's all I have. So thank you guys so much for coming. Appreciate it.